the Iranians are going to keep up the pressure. They're going to increase the pressure, and they're prepared for a very long war. We're prepared for a very long war. And we will do what it takes to make sure that this never happens again. And we'll make sure that the Israeli regime is so badly weakened that it will never be able to treat the Palestinian people with such impunity again. So if the regime knows what's good for it, it will seek a solution very swiftly. Time is not on its side, and Iran is determined. The Israelis and the Americans and the Europeans made a huge miscalculation. They carried out this sudden and unprovoked act of aggression and murdered innocent people, children on the streets, thrown out of their windows. Just as I said a few hours ago, 10 more children just in one building slaughtered by Trump and Netanyahu and Witkoff and all of those who are a part of this conspiracy. They may have had some successes on day one, but their major miscalculation was that they have shown the world that they are the aggressor. And most importantly, in the eyes of the Iranian people, they are the aggressor. And that has united Iranians more than I've ever seen before, since probably the war, where Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. So I think that this was a major miscalculation. The Zionist regime will not succeed, and it will probably, in my opinion, bring an end ultimately to Netanyahu's career. And I think that the regime will continue to go downhill until its ultimate demise. And hopefully we'll have a Palestine where Jews, Christians, Muslims can live as equal human beings, something that the West looks on in horror, an idea that people can be equal human beings. The West is like outraged by such a notion, and we are so evil. We are considered to be so evil because we're saying they should all have equal rights. You saw how Netanyahu was saying he's going to burn Tehran, or his minister of genocide said he's going to burn Tehran. Just like these are monsters. No sane person talks like that. No normal person talks like that. Burn Tehran, burn Gaza, burn Lebanon. These are maniacs, evil maniacs that have the full support of the West. And that says a lot about Western leaders, Western elites, Western legacy media journalists, Western think tankers. They all see this, but for them, they portray it as somehow normal. And they're constantly trying to justify everything that the Israeli regime does. I was on Sky News, and it sounded like this dystopian authoritarian regime with lipstick on it. They try to, they try to make it seem like it's normal, but their language is abnormal, their behavior is abnormal, their narrative is abnormal, and they're fully supportive of the Israeli regime. They say, when is Iran going to come back to the negotiating table? As if it was Iran that left the negotiating table. It was the Americans who were deceitful and carried out an assault. So the Western media is against us. Social media, of course, is weaponized against us. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there, a lot of doctored photos, a lot of AI clips, a lot of clips that have nothing to do with Iran, and some of the Israeli clips that are out obviously are very misleading. For example, some of the airstrikes that the Israelis carried out, and which they showed footage of, they bombed, for example, missile launchers, but there are no secondary explosions. And I've tweeted this so that people could see it. These are Israeli clips. There are no secondary explosions. Why? Because these are all decoys. The Iranians have decoys all over the place. So the Israelis are constantly bombing decoys, whether they're for decoys for radar or missiles, and they're putting it out as great successes. They've had much less success than people seem to think when they look up the news in social media or in Western accounts. So the tide has turned, and I think last night was a a sign of that. The Israelis were supposed to burn Tehran last night, and they couldn't. They killed some people. They hit some buildings, but Tehran is very much in place. It's Tehran. It hasn't been burned down. But last night we saw what happened to Tel Aviv, and we saw what happened to key installations in Israel. And this will continue, and it will get worse for the regime. And my advice is for Zionists to leave. It's time for them to go back home to wherever they came from, and live a peaceful life and try to get some sort of re-education so that they can view other human beings as equal. But in any case, the tide has turned, and Iran is going to make sure that when the fighting stops, it has the upper hand. Iran has many enemies. The Israeli regime has a huge coalition behind it, larger than the coalition that's behind Ukraine, for example. And in our region, we have many actors that are working for the Israeli regime. And some of them I don't want to name, but some of these drones come from Syria, some of them are coming from parts of Iraq, and there are other issues apparently that I don't want to get into. But the fact is that countries in the Persian Gulf region, they have been allowing the United States to use these bases to help the Israeli regime carry out the attacks and to defend the Israeli regime against Iran's counterattacks. This is a fact. They've been doing it in the past with regards to Yemen, and now they're doing it against Iran. US radar stations in Turkey are also being used, and airspace in Jordan is being used by the Americans, the British, and the Israelis to down Iranian drones. And the Iraqi airspace is also being used by this coalition of the genocidal. So Iran is up against a very formidable coalition with multiple layers. But I think Iran has shown extraordinary competence in that it regrouped literally within hours. And you saw after a few hours, the Iranians began firing missiles at the Israeli regime in retaliation for its atrocities across the country. Just a few hours ago, 10 kids were murdered in an apartment building in Tehran, in Narmak, in the east of Tehran, something that the Western media doesn't really care about because they're Iranian, of course. Just like they're Amalek. We're all Amalek. Just like the Palestinians, just like the Lebanese. The Israelis and the Americans, and the French, and the British, they've all come together to defend these ethno-supremacist monsters and to protect it and help it attack Iran and justify attacks on Iran. And they say the Israeli regime is strong, but they have to bring in everything they have. And interestingly, they have to bring in the air defense systems that were for Ukraine, that were supposed to be helping Ukraine to help Israel. Look at what they've done to Ukraine. They used Ukraine. They destroyed Ukraine. They've ruined its future. And now they've dumped it for the sake of this genocidal, monstrous regime. But people have woken up. So I think that Netanyahu has destroyed Israel. He's destroyed the regime. He's exposed the regime for what it really is. And now people like me, I have nothing to say. So many young people are saying it better than me. When I watch young people in Europe and the United States, young Jews, speak out against this fanatical regime, I'm so impressed by their eloquence, by their dignity, by their honor, by their morality, by their courage. So many, it's changed. The world has changed. So I think, yes, this is the final nail in the coffin, because Netanyahu will not win against Iran. Iran is determined to make sure the regime regrets what it did. It is determined, because we cannot appease the enemy. We cannot let them feel that they got something out of this. We have to make sure that they feel that this was a failure, so that it will never happen again. Just like with Saddam Hussein, we had to make sure that it would never happen again. So Iran is going to push till ultimately the regime has to back down. And I am confident that the regime will have to back down. Already we're seeing signs of this, but the Iranians have a lot of work to do still. But already we're seeing signs of this, because you see that the French president is contacting Iran, the French president who's supporting the attack, or the Qatari Emir contacts Iran, or the Americans are sending messages through different channels to Iran, saying we have nothing to do with this. Say it in open. Why are you saying it in private channels? So we're beginning to see how the other side is recognizing that they made a mistake, but Iran is going to reinforce that. Iran is going to make them see this is not going to be easy, Nima. It will be tough, because the Israeli regime has no red lines. They have zero morality. They're carrying out a genocide, a Holocaust in Gaza. And by the way, Nima, all of your viewers should always keep Gaza in mind. We should not be distracted from Gaza. We should be focusing on everything. But the children of Gaza they're continuing to starve, the West and the Israeli regime, and the slaughter that the West and the Israeli regime and their allies are carrying out. This is nonstop. As the Iranian missiles strike Zionist targets, we should still be thinking about the kids who are being slaughtered in Gaza, about the ethnic cleansing being carried out in the West Bank, by the Israeli regime's crimes being carried out still in Lebanon. So, but the Iranians it's going to be tough. It has no red lines, the regime, and the West has no red lines either. They're all the same. So they're going to kill people, they're going to cause damage, they're going to strike civilian targets, they're going to strike civilian factories and businesses, which they're doing. And they'll all call them nuclear sites or weapons production sites. They bombed a car factory. So, but that's not how the West is going to report it. But I should point out that all of Iran's key assets, Nima, are deep underground. The buildings on the surface, on the ground, the buildings that are in open space, those are not the key assets. Everything that's important is deep underground and inaccessible to the regime and to the Americans. And the same is true with Iranian underground drone bases and missile bases. They're inaccessible and they're everywhere. And Iran has decoys all over the place. And these decoys, they're real cars. That's how it works. I don't want to go into detail, but they have a very sophisticated system. So when the Israelis think that they're knocking out one launcher after another and one radar system after another, a lot of them are just decoys. They have had successes with radar and by murdering people. They have had successes, but not the sort of successes that many people. They can kill more of our people, but it's not going to change. Nothing will change. This is the Islamic Republic of Iran will remain steadfast. It will grow more powerful, and it will not give up on the Palestinian people. It will not forsake the Palestinian people. Iran will continue to support the Palestinian people until they get liberation, until they're treated as human beings. and the West can do nothing about it. And the axis of resistance will continue the struggle until the Palestinian people get their full rights as equal human beings. The West does not consider Palestinians as human. They consider them as subhuman. Let's be very frank. The West supports ethno-supremacism. They support this notion of a chosen people. Even those who don't even believe in religion, they support the Zionists as the chosen people somehow. Christian Zionists, this cult, claim that Christ supports this genocide. You have these people. But most Westerners, ordinary people on the streets, from all walks of life, they're awake now. They see the reality. Increasingly, they're waking up. And again, at the forefront, you see young Jews. You see, I don't know if you saw the clip of that young woman, I think she was a Hindu at MIT, who spoke out against apartheid. People from all walks of life, from different religions and races, they're all waking up. And so the world has changed. So they should not have any hope. The Israeli regime, their backers should not have any hope. Iran will be steadfast. It will remain supportive of the Palestinian people. It is strong. It is powerful. What is breaking apart is the narrative that the West has successfully been able to create for decades. And young people and older people, but mostly young people across the world are the ones who are crushing this narrative. As I said, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, men, women, people from all workers, factory workers, university students. It's quite amazing. And I think it's very encouraging. And actually, Nima, I think it's many of these young Jews have made such a fantastic argument over the past few months that the most anti-Semitic, whatever that means, because Palestinians are really the Semites. Most of these, for example, the Ashkenazi Jews are European. But anyway, but this anti-Semitism, if we are going to look at it from the perspective that they use the term in the West, the most anti-Semitic ideology is Zionism. Because they're doing all these atrocities, all these criminal acts in Iran, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, in Syria, in the name of Jews. And Jews are crying out, many, many young Jews are crying out, not in my name. So they are the real enemies of Judaism.